go. Just again, so we can get it published a little bit. So this is. I know we've now got pretty much most of the actual hard build instructions. There's two sets. There's the PDF documents, and then there's also the work that Andy did on the online instructions. So it does get, I guess, most of the experienced builders to a point. But what I wanted to do was go through DO in a little bit more on the electronics, and also all the initial issues and challenges that people might face when they start to play with this little guy. And I'll just step through the code as well, I think. So hopefully you can see a huge picture of DO there. Yeah, that come through there. So this is my model. So this has been this is DO. This is the second one I built actually. The first one's now been converted to Dobby. But this is the one. This is the one that I've managed to get fully complete and painted and aged and all of that sort of stuff. I haven't got the weathered panels on here, which Jeff did for me, which I know Stuart's made those, and those look superb. So I think that's probably one of my little upgrades on there. But I'll point a couple of things out just as we go through. One of the things that I get asked about is on this side panel here. Let's just put the camera down a little bit. You can see. Let's see if we get a bit more light. You've got this black cable here, which is part of the detail. Now, one of the questions is there's a magnet that sits behind this panel. The reason for that magnet is if you look on the end of that cable, what I've done is popped a magnet in there. And so what I can do is just drop that cable and it sticks to that panel in the right place as to where it should be. I don't know if you can see the light, but it's just there. So, and the reason for that is it just lets me detach this head section really simply because I don't have to do anything with this cable. So that's what your magnet's for. So just fire him up. I've got my RC controller. Running on a table, what could possibly go wrong? So yeah, so there it goes. All yeah. Once he's tuned, he should be pretty controllable. Like I said, I'm running this on a tiny desk, so he's pretty good. And then stable-wise, is again pretty stable. So what I'll do is we'll turn him off, and then I'll take you through some of the main components and just how it goes together. So the physical build will show you how it's assembled, but what you choose to do around the cabling and things like that, I think you can make life a little bit easier. So this little bit here comes off. And then what you've actually got is this is all completely loose because the servo sits in the top of the head. I'm just going to grab a screwdriver, and what we'll do is we'll take that side panel off. Get the right size screwdriver. So the whole head is held on just literally by these 3 screws. I've got the digital servo in there, so there's no stops on it. So sometimes you just slide that. But let's just pull them apart, and then we can start to have a look at what's inside. So 2 big bolts, and then this whole panel comes off. Now what I've got here is a 6-point DuPont connector, as you can see. So the reason I use that is it just means that I can take this whole head section off as a single unit and just pop it somewhere. So a combination of that little connector there, 2 screws out, and the whole thing comes off. I know there's been a modification for this to use a slightly larger connector on there, but the 6-pin, which is 3x2 DuPont connector, just fits inside that hole quite comfortably. So that's the first part around disassembling. Disassembling DO. And then each of the panels, let's just move the camera a little bit so we can see. Each of the panels are magnetic, so they just come off on there. Anybody's got any questions as we go through that, just fire away. One of the things to watch, and it was something that came up, was that these little magnets that hold the panels on, they're 5 mil cylinders by 5 mil. They do actually protrude, so they do stick out. So they're not completely flush. I know people have had looked at that and gone, "Whoa, are they supposed to sit like that?" Yeah, they are supposed to sit out. The reason being is that these panels sit on top of the inside of this frame, so the magnets come out a little bit, just so that they'll keep the side panels on.
And
Michael, sorry, yeah.
So the conversation around the magnets, it turns out, and this is a little point of note. Christina, I think, wound up gluing her outer detail to both sides of Lazy Susan.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So she was expecting the mounting points on the Susan to be able to travel across the magnets. So that's why she was running into issues with that.
Got you. That makes sense.
But I do know people were confused about them not sitting flush, because most things do sit flush.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Sorry, Marine.
The other thing is I ordered the cylinders and they've gotten lost in shipping, and I don't think Amazon's going to be carrying them again. And I just epoxy another layer of magnets on top of the ones that I have sitting flushed.
Yeah.
And would that work?
That's what I did. I'm running.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm running magnets that aren't long enough, so I think my magnets are 4 mil deep rather than the 5 mil, and I just kind of let them float in in a little bit of epoxy in there, and then also set the panel on there so that they set out long enough, and I just kind of let the whole thing cure overnight, and they sit out perfectly.
Yeah.
But if you can stack them, that works even better.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It will work. That'll be fine. We get through quite a lot of epoxy. I've always got a tube somewhere. So literally, then you've got a number of screws. This comes off, and then the whole tire will then come off, and then effectively you've got access to all of the electronics for the DO. So if you one of the things around this, I guess, is battery changes, because the batteries are kind of sat right inside of the body, and so battery changes you do need to take it down to this kind of level to change the batteries. And the reason I've done it that way is because there's so much tight space in there, it's quite difficult. With hindsight, what I could have done is probably put the batteries in at an angle so they'll come out a little bit easier. Because what you're trying to do is you've got the batteries that sit here, and then I've got a mega on top of it that covers all of the battery panel. So there is possibility of doing it on a slightly different sort of angle. And then what you've got is this plate which holds both the mega and the IMU. There's a couple of holes which are for cable ties. So if you click the cable ties, you can lift the IMU and the mega off, which that's all I would do when I change the batteries. I'm just going to take the other side, Susan, off as well. And again, it's fairly straightforward. It's just number of screws on the sides, and then we'll just get down to the basic frame. When I think that one of the most important things I think on this build is making sure that your Susans, your drive Susans, are quite free. So I mean, obviously we're using 3D printed parts, and everybody's printing is slightly different. So you make your tolerances, the materials that you use. You just make sure that once you've got your Lazy Susans, that you spend a bit of time sanding those and making sure that they do move quite freely. I'll take this off. There we go. So at this stage, then you're pretty much disassembled. I'll just kind of show you. So that's the Susan, and you can see, get hold of the right piece. So you've got quite a lot of free smooth movement on there. The assembly of these are instructions, but you've got it's basically, there's a little hole there where you feed the bearings in, and then you just pop in 10 mil 10 mil plastic bearings. I think the Americans use slightly smaller ones, but the important bit is it's free. The other thing I think that I recommend is putting some white grease on the inside of the runners before you put the bearings in. So sand these runs quite so they're quite clean and smooth. A little white grease around there. Put your bearings in. And then I used a little bit of 3-in-1 oil, which is a bit looser oil, just to try and loosen the grease up, so that I still get a nice free movement. As long as you've got it enough to get it up and running and working, what happens is it runs along, they free up naturally anyway as they just start to bed in. But yeah, so both of these are quite free. The other thing to note on this particular one is I'm using the flex tire. So there's two versions. There's one which has got this rim with the drive edge is a single piece TPU, and then there's this version which has got a stretched tire that goes all the way around the outside. So you can print it either solid in PETG or PLA, or you can print it with this rubber tire. Performance-wise, there's not much difference. In fact, to be honest, I quite like the solid tires because you can wheel spin it when you're throwing it around. It does donuts and all of that kind of stuff. So we've got down to, really, this is the main engine, and I'll take you through the electronics. What I would say is one of the really useful skills is learning how to crimp and how to create connectors, because what you want to be able to do is start to, when you disassembling it, like I said before on this, using this 6-pin DuPont connector, the more connectors you can put in, the easier it is to disassemble. So if we look at it on top, I guess the general area thing is in this base, in this little hole here. That's your motor driver, which are these. They're Cytron MD. What are we called? There we go. That's the motor driver. MD 10 amps, the dual channel, and that sits right in the heart of it here. And then that runs these two drives, one here and one here. The thing with what I've used on all of these is these little metal collars. There's two options. You can use printed gears or you can put the collars. I much prefer the collars. They're a lot more solid. And you can also use Loctite on the screws so that they don't come loose. They're obviously, you can imagine they do get quite a lot of spin. One of the things that Sam Prentice, I think, did a clip on Instagram about was, and we've had a few of these where the motors, whether it's a bad batch from Polu, or there's some issue, but what he found is that the two motors weren't running at the same speed, and one of them was making like a bit more of a grinding noise. We've had a couple of people that have had that. So what you've got to watch is when you power it up in this kind of configuration without any load on it, is just make sure they both sound the same. If they don't, various kind of, and I don't know whether it is a bad batch or what, but people have had a few issues with it where one of the motors is overheated. When you're starting to run him around, it's almost like he's got a flat tire, not a squeaky tire, a flat tire, and he's kind of going off slightly to the left or slightly to the right. And in all cases, that's been solved by getting some replacement batteries for the ones that have been ordered. So that's something to watch out for. So the wiring. I think what we can just grab a snipper and I'll just show you a little bit more inside. I'm just getting. And this is where, when take your time with the wiring, put lots of connectors in, because what you want to try and do is make it as clean as possible, so you can actually start to disassemble him